Today we're going to be going over 10 devious and dastardly tips for dungeon masters running clerics and other divine spellcasters in their games. Now, although these points are intended for dungeon masters, they will work equally well for players running clerics and other divines. However, if you are a player and not a DM, please leave now. Click off, go watch a different video, I'm serious. There are heaps and heaps of videos out there to help players build super OP broken characters. This video is intended to help dungeon masters keep up with the power curve and run fun and interesting combats with clerics and divine spellcasters. So now that I've just lost 80% of you because nobody would dare cheat, let's hit our points. I'm a little hyper. Number 1, stay away. Divine spellcasters need frontline melee types to keep the heat off them. They need melee bad guys to tie up the characters so that the clerics and divines can stay out of melee combat toward the back. The worst thing that can happen to any caster you are running is to get next to your enemies and get pinned down. At that point, your life expectancy is probably going to be very short. Number 2, keep it a secret. Don't reveal their divine spellcaster nature until the melee bad guys have engaged the characters. And if your bad guy cleric gets high initiative, maybe don't even have them cast on the first round. Use a ranged attack such as a throwing hammer or something. And the players will be like, oh, this is a wussy throwing hammer, worthless, don't even worry about him. That's what you want. You want them to ignore them so that your melees can engage them and then your cleric can go to town. Then, once the cleric's allies have engaged most of the characters in melee, now it's time to start casting spells. This will make it harder for the melee PCs to get at them and allow you to run a cagier caster. Now, an important part of running any game as a dungeon master is describing the bad guys and the actions they take. The same is true when your bad guys are clerics and divine spellcasters. However, if you're not the best at descriptions and narrations, Describe can help. Over at describe.com, you can get a truckload of narrative descriptions and read aloud text to help you set the scene beautifully for your players. And they have tons of stuff for clerics. Just type cleric in the search bar and you'll see results of descriptions of clerics and descriptions of them casting various spells. Don't just say the bad guy casts bless. No, describe it. Now, one of the things that I love about Describe is that they are always adding new content. For instance, they recently published 2 new collections, Nature and Vehicles and Mounts. So if your divine spellcaster is a druid, you might just find a little something there for you. You can try out Describe for free at the link below. And if you do go with a paid subscription, use the discount code TheDMLayer to get 10% off. Number 3, defense, defense, defense. You can only support your bad guy allies if you are alive and able to use your spells. So you want good armor. Heavy armor plus a shield for AC 18 through 20 is the way to go. You need to be a turtle. Think about it. No player would ever don anything less for their cleric character. Why would a DM intentionally make a bad guy cleric with crappy armor class? Even people with low intelligence are smart enough to know to wear armor and stay alive. Next, take the Warcaster feat. Characters can have feats, your bad guys can take feats too. Warcaster is going to give you advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain your concentration, and your cleric or divine spellcaster absolutely needs to have that. Almost every single player who runs a cleric or divine spellcaster takes that feat when they can. You probably should too. Also, feel free to give your divine spellcasters proficiency in Constitution saving throws. As new splat books come out like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, characters get more and more powerful. Your clerics really do need this edge. Number 4, support, don't blast. Divine casters are support characters. They are not blasters. Okay, yes! Spirit Guardians is amazing, but some of the best things a bad guy cleric can do is boost the power and survivability of their allies in a combat. Now, when we get to spells a bit later, we're going to talk more about this, but using your clerics as support casters will also make the combats more interesting and tactically challenging for players, as opposed to just laying down swaths of damage, which divine casters aren't usually the best at, except for Spirit Guardians, of course, which I tend to cast a lot. Because, yeah. Number 5, be a jerk. When your bad guys drop to 0 hit points, use Healing Word. It's a bonus action, baby. Get them back up. This is also very smart from an action economy standpoint as well. You basically spend 1 bonus action to get back an action from the bad guy who went to 0 hit points, and you'll get a player to use an action to attack once again the bad guy who went down. Because, you know, the bad guy goes down, your cleric is going to healing word, he's going to pop back up, and the character is probably going to attack him again and drop him back. So from an action economy standpoint, that is genius. So even if your bad guys don't stay up for very long, because only 1 hit point after healing word isn't a whole lot, it is still a very good action economy move. Also, it makes the combat more interesting for players. That darn cleric! The bad guys won't stay down! I mean, geez, how frustrating is that? How great? It's like, holy crap, nobody dies because that stupid cleric keeps bopping them with healing word. Do that in your games, and your players are going to be like, the first time you do that, guarantee it. Now, right about now, somebody's like, but Luke, when the bad guys go to 0 hit points, they're dead. Healing word's not gonna work on them. Like, yeah, dude, because I have a house rule, and it goes like this. If an enemy cleric casts healing word, the round after an enemy is reduced to 0 hit points, the enemy gets back up. It gets 1 hit point back. It's not dead. Yeah, I know, it's not technically in the rules that way. It's why it's a house rule that I use, because it makes things a little bit more interesting. Now, at some point, someone is gonna be like, but Luke, what good is all this advice when there are so few cleric and divine spellcaster stat blocks available for dungeon masters in the game? Yeah, that's an excellent point, because Wizards of the Coast hasn't really given much love to divine spellcasters in 5th edition. Like, we have very few stat blocks for divines, and the ones we have tend to be kind of low. And that's exactly why in our latest issue of Lair magazine, Trial and Trust, we published a bunch of new divine spellcasters DMs can use in their games. The Abbot, the Agitator, the Crusader, the Divine Sage, and more. They span challenge ratings 1/8 to 15, giving you a wide variety of options at the different tiers of play. Now, if you'd like to pick up Lair magazine, you can do so by becoming a DN Lair patron at the link below. Not only will you get these new divine spellcasters, but you'll get tons of other DM resources in Lair magazine each month, such as 5th edition adventures, digital maps, puzzles, traps, and more. Everything is designed to be easy to use for DMs and to be dragged and dropped into your existing games. Number 6, plan for Counterspell. Counterspell is your bad guy caster's worst nightmare come true. It will take them completely out of the fight. It's also a DM's worst nightmare come true. And what I mean by that is it's a problem because as a dungeon master, you want to make the combats fun and exciting, and spells go a long way towards making that happen. But if you can't cast spells because somebody has Counterspell and they keep on using it, a really cool tool is being removed from your toolbox. And it's essentially preventing you from making the game more interesting and fun, which pretty much sucks. So my suggestion is that if there is a character with Counterspell, plan accordingly. This isn't nerfing or bypassing character abilities, in my opinion. This is the dungeon master doing their job and keeping the game fun and interesting in spite of what is, in my opinion, very bad game design. By bad game design, I mean the existence of the spell Counterspell. The first very simple thing you can do is you can have more than one divine caster in an encounter, because that PC wizard can only counterspell one of them. This is perhaps my preferred option as it's very easy to implement. Now, the other thing you can do is simply stay out of range or around corners, because Counterspell states that you have to be able to see the person casting the spell and you have to be within 60 feet. So if you can break either of those requirements, you're good to go. However, staying out of range is kind of hard to do because many times you're in a dungeon and space is somewhat limited. However, here's a trick you can use. You can ready the spell. Now, what you're gonna do is basically move around a corner where the character with Counterspell can't see you, because Counterspell only works if they can see you. Then you ready the spell and set a trigger. This means you cast the spell while you're around the corner and can't be countered, and then you have it readied so that you can release it with a reaction. Then you come around the corner and you could have the trigger be when I see X character, and then the spell goes off. Because the spell was actually cast around the corner, it is only being released at that point, and Counterspell would not work. Now, the big downside to this is that readying a spell requires concentration, so you won't be able to use some of the more powerful divine spells like Spirit Guardians, which I really love. However, being able to cast some spells is way better than not being able to cast any, because they're always getting counterspelled. Number 7, blow your wad. When casting spells, don't hold back. Use your very best spells right away. The cleric is only going to live 2 to 3 rounds at best. And as soon as the characters know there is a divine spellcaster causing havoc and healing the bad guys, they will probably focus fire. By the way, if you're finding this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment for the algorithm. Let me know what your favorite divine spellcaster is in the game. And if you are a player who ignored my request to leave this video and you're still here, well, just lie to me, leave a comment, and pretend that you're a dungeon master and see if you can fool me. See how good you can roll your deception check. How well you can roll? Yeah, we're good at grammar. Number 8, must-have spells. First, I'll talk about some really good spells all divine caster enemies should consider stocking, spells that they should avoid, and then I'll talk about a basic spellcasting strategy and the order you can use. Yes, players could use this with their clerics, so I suggest not sharing this video with your players. They don't need an edge, guys. They really don't need an edge. Wizards is doing everything they can to give characters and players more power and more stuff. So this is just for dungeon masters, guys. Keep this top secret. Yeah. Okay, and I'm just gonna hit the big spells here that I repeatedly see put to good effect, even at higher levels. Obviously, there are lots of spells and lots of possibilities. Healing Word. I mean, if the characters can do it, why not the bad guys? Imagine their panic when an enemy is killed, but then the enemy cleric just healing words them and gets them back on their feet. Oh, and don't forget mass healing word or heal if you can get them. Those are even cooler. Obviously, we have spirit guardians. You want to cast this bad boy and stay mobile. Don't get pinned down. Like I said, let your melee allies keep the characters off your back. Having Warcaster is especially important here. Spiritual Weapon. You cast it as a bonus action, and then you essentially get a free attack every round, and there is no concentration. This is a very good spell. Bless. Okay, yeah, 1d4, you'll be like, well, it's just 1d4, who cares? No, it is a really good spell for a system like 5th edition that has bounded accuracy. Players use it all the time for good reason. I mean, if the players aren't using Spirit Guardians because they might be out of spell slots or something, they're probably going to be using Bless because it is a solid use of concentration. And then we have Silence. This will stop character casters in their tracks. Yeah, the wizard's gonna counterspell you, not if they're in the silence, are they? Now, it is concentration, but if the wizard or cleric is tearing you up, it is a good use of it. And in close quarters, like many D&D adventures, it's hard to get out of the area of effect and still have line of sight to be able to see targets and effectively cast spells. You just wanna obviously target it over the characters, over the good guys, and not over your bad guys, and especially not over your own cleric, because that would just not be smart. Inflict Wounds. If you get pinned into melee, this spell is pound for pound one of the highest damage dealers you can get. It is absolutely amazing. And Sanctuary. You cast it with a bonus action, it lasts 1 minute, there is no concentration, and it can prevent characters from attacking you. So like if you get pinned down, cast Sanctuary and you might be able to get free. Dispel Magic. This is like the most super utilitarian spell, one of the most useful, powerful spells you can stack besides Counterspell, which divine casters don't get. So take Dispel Magic and you will be able to clean up a whole bunch of horrible effects that the wizard or other cleric character might just throw down. They cast Haste on one of their friends? Okay, Dispel Magic. They cast Spirit Guardians. Oh, okay, Dispel Magic. Like, the uses of Dispel Magic are really, really good. And I feel like Dispel Magic is probably one of the most underused spells in the game by dungeon masters, because it's, yeah, try it out. And see the look on your players' faces when you just start Dispel Magicking some of their persistent effects. Like, they're really good stuff that they got going, and then it's just like, Haste is gone, Spirit Guardians is gone, and your players are like, oh, crap. We should probably go take care of that cleric now. That's not good. Revivify. I mean, hey, if the characters are popping Healing Word and Revivify in combat, let's have the bad guys do it too. You can freak your players out when the bad guys just won't stay down. Now, it does cost a diamond worth 300 gold pieces, so after the dust settles and your characters are looting the divine spellcaster's body, make sure they find at least one such diamond left over. I mean, it's only fair. Now, if I forgot to mention any really good spells, please let us all know down in the comments what they are and what makes them exceptional. Number 9, spells to avoid. Hold Person, Banishment, and other spells that take players players out of the game. Avoid those spells. And by the way, that's the reason to avoid them, because they take your players out of the game, they put them on the sideline, and they just sit there and watch everybody else play the game. And that's usually not a whole lot of fun. Now, I personally do use them sometimes, but I do it very sparingly. I mean, I want my players to be able to play the game, not just sit there for a half an hour to an hour of combat and just watch and wait and hope, because that's just not fun and cool, and I don't want that for my players. Usually. Sometimes I'm going to use them, but try to do it very rarely. Number 10, basic spell tactics. I'm just gonna run down a very generic spell tactic here that you could use in your games, which I have found to be pretty useful. Obviously, there's a million different combos and things you could do. This is just one thing. All right, round 1, I throw down Spear Guardians and I stay mobile behind my front line, but with the spell hitting the characters as much as I can. And if I can stay around a corner, then I do, because Spear Guardians spreads around corners. On round 2, I'm gonna cast Spiritual Weapon plus a cantrip such as Sacred Flame. This is going to give me a nice little extra attack for free, essentially. And if my bad guy allies are starting to drop, which is possible in round 2, I'm going to use Healing Word plus a cantrip instead to help keep them on their feet. And I'm going to try to keep my Spirit Guardian position to deal damage. Now, I do want to keep using covering corners so that characters can't get clear shots at me, because they're at this point going to start taking ranged attacks or using spells on me. Round 3, I'm going to use my bonus action to attack with Spiritual Weapon, and then use my action to cast another spell as the situation demands. It might be Sanctuary, Healing Word, Dispel Magic, etc. And if I have any big damage dealers such as Flame Strike, I'm gonna use them right now. By the way, here's a quick house rule that I use in my games. If a spell requires a bonus action to cast, you can also use an action to cast it if you want to. So you could attack with Spiritual Weapon, which requires a bonus action, and then cast Healing Word, which technically requires a bonus action. Now, during the course of combat, if you lose concentration, go on right ahead and cast Spirit Guardians again, or if you have no spell slots available for it, cast Bless. This is a very solid tactic to use most of the time, but I caution against using it all of the time because it could get very boring for your players. You want to switch things up every so often. Click right here on the screen to learn about crafting with monster parts in D&D, or right down here to become a DM Lair patron and get a bunch of divine spellcasters to use in your games, along with lots of other Dungeon Master resources every single month in Lair magazine. And until next time, be a jerk. A loving jerk, but a jerk nonetheless.